Foodtruckr School is now in session. This is episode 29. What's up, Food Truckers? My name is Pat Flynn, your host of Foodtruckr School, and this is the show where you're going to help take your food truck or potential food truck business to the next level. So keep listening. We got a great one for you today. Today we're talking with Nathan Beck from Natedogs.com. Natedogs Quality Wieners. He runs a food cart in Minnesota, something different that we haven't talked about on the show, and you're going to hear about the benefits of starting a food cart instead of a food truck, but also the things you have to worry about too. We're also going to talk about branding and the wonderful job Nate and his team has done to help put his website and the whole branding aspect behind Natedogs together. It's just beautiful. So check it out at Natedogs.com so you can see what we're looking at and what we're talking about. So here we go. This is Nate from Natedogs in Minnesota. Hey, what's up, food truckers? Here today, I am so happy to welcome Nathan Beck from Natedogs.com. An amazing truck or not a truck, actually, a cart, which is interesting. And we're going to talk about that. Nathan, just thank you so much for coming on the show and being here with us today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
So why don't you tell us what Natedogs is all about, where are you based, and how did it get started?
Natedogs is an artisan hot dog cart, for lack of a better term. So I call my cart Natedogs Quality Wieners. So what I do is I serve basically two things. I serve a wiener and I serve a brat. But everything that I serve is all sized in that more traditional wiener casing. So it keeps it simple for me. It keeps the price point very consistent. It's easier portion control. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to have a very nostalgic, classic looking hot dog cart that had a really distinct characteristic brand to it and really put a lot of time and energy into that brand. The logo, the social media aspect, the marketing, all of that, I wanted it to have a really tight, high quality feel to it. And so I serve all natural, locally sourced pork here from Minnesota that's hormone free, antibiotic free, made by small suppliers and processors so that I get really, really high quality product. And then I wanted to make a niche of really trying to target my business towards things that weren't your typical go to your local downtown metropolis, set up your truck or your cart and go there every day, kind of the same routine. I wanted to have a really varied schedule. So I really went after the craft brewing community, which was really burgeoning about 4.5 years ago, and have now made some really amazing friendships with those breweries, largely because I make mustards out of all of their beers. And that was one of the ways that I got my toe in the door and then started working with them as they opened up tap rooms and breweries. And the partnership, I guess you could call it, has really been fantastic. It's given me a lot of great business. It's also made me a lot of incredible friendships, but it's given me a nice niche where I have a very tightly dialed in business model per se, where I do only a very few things, but I do them really, really well and very high quality. And then the other aspect of my business that I really try to focus on that I think makes me really unique, even compared to other food trucks and restaurants, is that because I went for a cart because it's what I could afford and not go into debt to start my business, I have an environment that allows me to have somewhat more of a community around my cart than you do at the window of a food truck or sitting at a table in a restaurant. So somebody, when they come up to the side of my cart to order a hot dog, can walk around the other side of the cart and still be a part of the conversation and still be a part of the community and experience while not taking away from those customers that are waiting in line. So it creates a much more relational aspect of the business, which is kind of my primary goal, is to basically be able to start friendships and impact lives by serving people food and doing that through a hot dog cart, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I love there's a deeper meaning behind what you do. I think that's really cool. And for everybody out there, we have a lot of people who are listening who really their dream is to start a food truck, but never even considered a food cart. Can you go over the benefits, other benefits besides the community aspect, which I think is really important, of having a cart, and also how much is it versus a traditional food truck?
Either way, there are pros and cons. And I think there are a lot of really good benefits to a cart. One, you have a much smaller size and a much smaller investment. So I think if you were to be really honest, including if you were to put a lot of your own blood, sweat, and tears into buying a food truck and completely rehabbing it, I honestly think you're somewhere, I guess you could say grossly, between $50,000 and $150,000, depending on how elaborate your truck is and how much work you put in, or how new any of that is with the truck. But with a cart, I bought from a company down in Florida that makes pretty top of the line carts, and even with a custom color and some add-on bells and whistles, you're looking at about $5,000 to $6,000 as opposed to about $100,000. Now, one of the drawbacks up in the Minnesota climate is that my first winter, I worked 5 days a week all through December, January, February, and March, working outside in 10 to 30 degree weather. And it was rough. You got to get salt off the cart. It's dirty and cold, and it can freeze your water lines and all of that. However, when I get hired to do a wedding or I get hired to do a graduation party, one of the things that's really cool is that, say a food truck pulls up, they pull up in the driveway and everyone comes out to the front yard and lines up for the food truck. I can actually, if they have space, I can wheel my cart right into the backyard and I then become part of the event. I become somebody that guests can talk to. I become another focal point of that event that really adds an element that you don't quite have when you have a food truck. And the other thing too is I think it really gives you a lot of opportunity to be really creative because it forces you to really, really dial in your product offerings because you don't have as much space and you don't have room to have a menu of 5 to 15 options. It forces you to really tighten up what you have to make something really, really special.
Some food trucks with all that space could probably use that advice too, because they offer everything, but those few staple things, I think that's a really, really great point. It does force you to pick those things that are going to work for you in that small space that you have. In terms of transporting a car, is that done on the trailer or is that something you could push around and move in a particular area?
It's both. What I bought is most of the carts now are actually made as their own trailers with a hitch and everything. So you literally pop them on the back of your vehicle on the hitch, on the ball, lock it down and away you go. You have to be a little bit careful that you don't, drive on really bumpy roads or go for too long because they're, the wheels are small and they can't go quite as fast. But the 2 carts that I have been going we're starting my 5th season now with Natedogs. And apart from, a little bit of maintenance on the bearings and what have you, they're still rocking and rolling. And in fact, the first cart that I had got rear-ended by an individual in the city who, best I can gather, hit me on purpose because he was upset I pulled out in front of him. So he tapped the back of my cart and drove off. So I got a nice dent on the back of my cart and it still works and still runs, and I still do events with it. So they're pretty hardy. But yeah, they basically, then once you take it off the vehicle, you put a wheel on the front and you can push it around up the sidewalk, into a backyard, out to an event space in a field, pretty much anywhere you want to go. So it's pretty slick.
That's sweet.
And mine is tiny. It's 4 feet by 8 feet long. So it's as small as you're going to find, but it's a pretty stout little unit. And I end up at events where I'm at with other food trucks where, each of us are maybe doing between 800 and 1,000 customers. I can go toe to toe with any of those food trucks and serve at the same pace out of that little cart. You just have to get a little creative and learn how it works and what kind of boundaries you have. But, I can bring a cooler with 1,000 hot dogs that are all frozen and ready to just be reheated. Whereas a food truck has capacity for in the truck, maybe 300 to 400 before they have to go back to a kitchen and resupply because they just don't have enough cooler space.
I love that.
It oddly ends up giving me some real bonuses or real benefits that I didn't really expect when I started out.
That's so cool. And final question about the car in terms of the rules and regulations. Obviously, food trucks, we've talked about this on the show many times before. Every city has a different set of rules and regulations, health requirements. Are there the same requirements for food carts, or is it sort of a different process?
More or less. Interestingly, in the city of Minneapolis, which is kind of the primary food truck city here in Minnesota, more so even than St. Paul, Minneapolis has a unique position on food carts and food trucks in that food carts have been, in one shape or another, allowed and have existed on the sidewalks of Minneapolis for maybe 30 plus years or so. And so the guidelines for food carts have been around for a long time, slowly being tweaked here or there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started out my first year, my license to operate a 4 foot by 8 foot food cart on a sidewalk in one particular spot all summer long was just over $1,000. That same year, the license for a food truck to operate on the city streets at any meter and pretty much with a lot more flexibility was about $450. So what happened is when the city of Minneapolis decided to allow this food truck wave to come in, they wrote a brand new ordinance for the food trucks that was distinct and separate than what it was for a food cart. Now, the state of Minnesota, oddly enough, doesn't have that same restriction. It's scaled a little more appropriately where we can go exactly the same places that the food trucks can go with about the same license and the same inspection. However, the city of Minneapolis hasn't kind of caught up with that and still has a bigger discrepancy. So like for a food cart, if you wanted to operate within the city confines of Minneapolis, you basically have to do it on a sidewalk at one spot, kind of like a regular New York City hot dog vendor would do every day at the same spot. Whereas the food trucks have the ability within a set boundary to go to any parking meter or any private lot that they want and set up shop there and sell their wares. So to some degree, there are some ways that it's, overall the health inspections are exactly the same. They're going to require you to have a commissary kitchen, someplace, you return to wash your dishes and prep your food and store all your food. Mm-hmm. One thing I don't have to have with my cart is I don't have to have a 3-compartment sink. I just have a little hand sink that's attached to it. Tiny little one that you can basically just get your hands in. Whereas most food trucks will have some type of 3-compartment sink on the truck that can be used to wash dishes and whatnot if they have to go to multiple events in the same day.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that information, Nate. Again, we're talking with Nate over at Natedogs.com, running out of Minnesota. You got to check him out. I am so hungry right now after talking to you. Let's talk about your website and branding. I am on your website right now, again, Natedogs.com. It is very nostalgic in the way it's the branding, and I'm looking at pictures of your umbrella cart. It's just so well put together. How much time did you spend before you opened up shop to focus on branding, or is this something that has changed over time?
A lot of time focusing on it, to be honest with you, at the very beginning. So when I knew I wanted to do a hot dog cart, it was something that my wife and I had evolved into with the cart because we knew we could afford it, and hot dogs had always been my favorite food. I really knew I wanted to have that nostalgic, I would say, 30s, 40s cursive baseball script, something that you would have seen on the front of a baseball jersey in that time frame with that cursive script that my logo is in. I wanted to have that look. I knew I wanted it to be orange. That was just a color. That's my favorite color. And so the particular designer that I worked with to create that logo, the color, and everything was a guy that I had met at a previous company I'd worked for. And a lot of his work really just had that timeless feel to it, I guess you could say. Really well thought out, high attention to detail. I like the process of design, so it's something I'm really interested in. I just don't want to do it as a living. And so it was very important when we had that relationship started that he enjoyed that I knew very distinctly what I wanted, and it gave him a lot of direction to be able to create that look that I wanted. But as we got started, after, let's say, so we started out designing the cart as you see it on any of my pictures on Facebook page, on any of my pictures I posted on Twitter. We designed the cart first to have that really distinct look, and I just set up a very simple WordPress website that was a little different than what you're seeing now, and it functioned just fine. I didn't really need to put a ton of money into it, but kind of the first step that we really put a lot of time into was business cards. And also, after the first year, I created my first jarred mustard. So if you click on the swag tab on my website, my jarred mustard, it's a honey spiced mustard that I serve as my house mustard. So essentially as my yellow mustard. The labels on that bottle were created on the recommendation of my good friend. This designer's name is Jeff Holmberg. He works here locally in the Twin Cities. One of his good friends owns and operates a letterpress company called Studio on Fire. And he said, Nate, I think it'd be really cool if we did letterpress labels for your mustards. He said, it's going to be really expensive and we might be able to figure out a way to do some work in trade, but I think it'd be a really cool way to set your mustard apart. So those labels on there are letterpress printed on late 1800s, early 1900s antique letterpress printers. Wow. So it really gives a tactile feel and continues to add to that period look to the products. Kind of another thing that I added after the first year is pretty much with very few exceptions, I'm always in a shirt and tie when I'm operating at the cart, almost always. So that's another thing that I thought, you know what, I like dressing up. I like quality shoes, good clothing. I love that my background before this was I did a lot of work in retail. So I've always had a bent for wanting to have nice looking clothes. I thought, so many places when you walk up at a restaurant, even if they're in nice chef's whites, they're going to have some food on them, or it's going to look maybe a little bit worn. Or maybe they're just in a t-shirt and shorts. And I thought, how cool would it be, especially with a hot dog cart, to walk up and see a guy in a shirt and tie all year long, regardless of the temperature. I thought that would add a really nice element. And it's really then become part of my brand. In fact, the first year I operated, I got an award in a local magazine here in the Twin Cities as the best dressed food trucker.
That's sweet. That's sweet.
And the fun part is on days off with my kids, I'll wear bow ties and shirts like that anyway, just because I like dressing that way. And it makes me feel good. And so it becomes something that everybody knows about me. And so then when they see me not out in a tie, they're like, Nate, where's your tie? It's become something that's really become part of who I am and part of the brand that I've created. I've tried to have first and foremost with all of that brand, paying for things as we go. So one of the things I really try to tell anyone that asks me for advice is, if you want to go into debt and you're comfortable doing that, that's up to each person as to, how much they want to do that. I feel the same way about bringing on a business partner in any shape or form. Those are things, they come with certain risks and pitfalls, as well as rewards. And I think one of the things that's really important is to look at how much of this can you do on your own and how much of this can you pay cash for? And if you can't pay cash for it, how else can you be creative to earn more capital to be able to actually pay for what you want? And so I was very, very fortunate to be able to do a lot of really fun stuff in trade, both with my designer and with those printers, with brewers, and do parties where I provide the food and they maybe provide me with the cool. There's a great clothing shop here in the Twin Cities that we did a couple events, and we basically traded hot dogs for merchandise in their shop. And I was able to get some really fun stuff that then I wear at my cart, and I'm able to plug their shop as well as they plug my business for having that kind of relationship. So I think that's some of the ways that I've been able to do some fun marketing and some fun branding while still being able to do that without breaking the bank, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. You are doing it right. I think this is amazing. You've been in business for 5 years now, and it's obvious why you've been able to last so long while so many other people are only in this business for less than a year. You're doing it right. The branding is amazing. I just want to congratulate you on everything that you're doing. And this is really inspiring to hear. And I know everybody else feels the same way. So just thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this information. Seriously, I mean, every little detail that I see on the website and on you, the apron and the bow tie, it's just so well thought out. And that kind of stuff, which people often just blow over or don't even think about, it means a lot because you're not just selling food, you're selling an experience. And people are going to share you because of that.
Yep. Probably my biggest piece of advice to anybody, especially in food, is always remember that the next person coming up behind you, there's always the opportunity that they can make what you're making better. And so always be cognizant of the fact that it's way more about the experience than it is just about the food, because you can get really great food at a lot of different places. But if you think about the experiences that mean the most to you, more often than not, it's because of some type of relationship, whether really, really deep or really, really small, has made an impact on your experience, whether it was a server or an owner or a food truck. Always remember that. Build relationships with the people that come up to your business, and you'll have them for life. And it becomes way more than just the food, because, when somebody gets tired of tacos, they might still come back to you because they want the experience that you provide them, even if they're not in the mood for tacos or for hot dogs or for burgers, because it gives them something else that fulfills that need for relationship and that need for community that all of us really, really want.
So good. So good. Nathan, thank you so much again. Visit Nathan and his food truck if you're ever in the Minnesota area. Natedogs.com. You can also check him out on Twitter at Nate_dogs. Thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing and very, very educational for all of us listening. Thank you so much, Nathan.
You're welcome, Pat. Thanks for your time.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Nathan Beck, a.k.a. Nate from Natedogs.com. You can also find him on Twitter at Nate_dogs. Just an amazing story, and just what he's done with the food cart and just, oh my gosh, so inspiring. I think a lot of you out there who may not be able to afford a food truck at this current moment in time, you might want to consider starting a food truck, and you can check out Nate again and just the amazing job he's been able to do and putting all those little details and touches into place. It just matters so much. Again, thank you so much for listening and taking time out of your day to listen to Foodtruckr School today. We have another great episode for you in 2 weeks. In the meantime, we would love it if you head on over to iTunes and leave a quick review for us. That means so much because it totally helps out the show, but it helps other people who are potentially going to listen to the show see that it's worth it for them, or maybe you don't like it, but we still just want an honest review so we can have honest people come and listen to the show too. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you on foodtruckr.com and again in 2 weeks.